Hello, we are here today with another episode of our Above the Bar interviews. Today we have a shining star, Mr. Richard McPherson, who is our agriculture science and a plethora of other things that he does. One of the reasons we wanted to interview you this week is because it is, I think, FFA week. Is it this week or was it last week?
National FFA Week began last Saturday and it extends through this Sunday. So we have 9 days to our FFA Week.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the FFA week? What is that all about?
So National FFA Week is a time for the high school FFA programs from around the country to celebrate their career technical student organization by having proclamations signed by school boards, governors, senators, presidents sign the proclamation. It's broadcasted activities all through the week on RFD TV and the Cowboy Channel with a theme for every day throughout the week. So community service would be a day, work-based learning, supervised agricultural experiences would be a theme for today. Friday would be Wear Blue Day, kind of spirit week for National FFA.
Okay, great. So when you say like community service, I know that we do a lot of community service with FFA and our ag program. So what are some of the things that we do for community service?
So our community services include clearing parking lots for the Tubac Arts Festival, donating eggs to the food bank. We do perishable food, fresh produce, food drives for communities. We clean up cemeteries. The Rio Rico Cemetery will go in, weed eat and pick weeds and clean fence lines and clear grave markers. And just different activities like that we do. Around the high school, we're involved with cleaning up the athletic fields, making sure that Friday night lights, that sports complex looks welcoming and inviting for all of our guests that come to that. And we clean up stuff around the campus.
That's great. So with the eggs, how many eggs are we producing still on a weekly basis?
Well, right now in the winter with the short daylight hours, the egg production drops off because chickens need sunlight to lay eggs. So we add artificial lighting into the chicken coop to produce eggs. But we're up to probably about 20 to 30 dozen eggs a week right now. But what we've done due to the avian bird flu and the shortage of hatchery chicks, we've started producing our own brooders so that we can replace our laying hens when they get to be 93 weeks old. So we're creating our own replacement crop with some of that egg production. So we're about 15 dozen eggs a week that can go to the food bank if they're not consumed by bus drivers, teachers, local people, the principals that are looking for eggs to compete with the local markets.
Yeah. And I know that the cost of eggs continues to go up. So I think it's something that, given to the food bank, I know is really positive for them and really helps out the community.
Yes. And the food banks don't usually get fresh commodities to provide for their client base. And so eggs have a refrigerator shelf life of about 3 months. And so it's really hard for them to get a large donation and then spread it out over. But we've been able to help shoulder the burden for the community on the egg issue that's going on.
Yeah. Well, I know that I always hear how much they appreciate that. So I think it's great to support our community that way. So speaking of you yourself, you've been very busy. We recently read an article about the drone projects that you were doing. Why don't you share a little bit about that as well?
Okay. So several years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, the State Department of Education changed their technical standards for agri-science. And it included technology, innovation, GIS, and drone technology into the standards. And so I jumped on board and started creating curriculum to teach and cover that standard. And in the process of doing that and the research involved, I realized that there were 100,000 drone pilots needed in agriculture by 2025. So in less than 2 years. And the average salary for those drone pilots is $79,500. And the minimum requirement to become a commercial drone operator in agriculture was to be a 16-year-old FAA commercially licensed Part 107 pilot.
Yeah.
And so those numbers, the job opportunity, and everything that associated with that just got really interesting and really motivating for students that were not your traditional chicken, egg, greenhouse, tomato, tilapia student, but was involved with technology, innovation, forward thinking. We created a curriculum that was designed for engineering-minded students, STEM students, how to fly the drone with hand-eye coordination, dexterity, and then the Part 107 test preparation curriculum. And I worked with a publishing company on launching that curriculum last August. And so I've been traveling around the country spreading the gospel about we need 100,000 16-year-olds to make $80,000 a year in a year and a half. Yeah.
And how's that coming along for us? We have students that are participating in that?
Oh, yes, we definitely do. In my Ag 3 class, my 6th period class, those students in their personalized learning options, they have access to that curriculum. We have drones for them to practice with, to learn how to fly. We teach. They're kind of spoiled because they have the creator in the classroom, so they get a lot of extra attention. But we have 5 or 6 students that are preparing for their Part 107 testing in May.
Wow, that's great. So when people think of agri-science, you mentioned that they think of the chicken and the egg and all those things. So what are some of the other things? Right? Like I said, we just added the drone course for that. So what are some of the other things that we do in agri-science or just in CTE with your department?
So staying on with the drones and how it's being utilized in the other CTE programs, law enforcement is using drones for search and rescue, simulated crime scene investigations, aerial photography and videography that's associated with law enforcement. Of course, now we have digital photography, which with the drones, they have access to angles and autonomous flight programming that they didn't have before for audio and visual. And then we also have the TV and film CTE program that can utilize the drone technology in just creating anything for their morning announcements, their spotlights, their highlights, their promotional videos. And then one of the new ways that we're using it in the business drone technology in the business curriculum is that some of the students have engineered an RFID repeater that goes on the airframe of a drone. So then the produce that comes in, some of those smart buildings, smart warehouses have RFID chips in there, so that drone can real time inventory and locate assets for produce. And now we're using that in the cattle ranches, that are around here, feedlots, dairies. And so we're using radio frequency ID tags on the drone and assets.
Yeah, so we got a lot of, so what's the next thing you see for agri-science? Because I know that you're always thinking ahead of something. So what's the next thing that you think is coming for our agri-science program?
I think the next thing that's coming for our agri-science program is the utilization of reproductive abilities for our goats, sheep, and cattle, with not just using artificial insemination. That technology has been around pretty well since the 70s, but I think now moving forward, doing embryo transplants or transfers into the livestock that we have there, so that we can immediately improve the genetics of the livestock in one generation, as opposed to selectively breeding over several generations to improve those genetics. So that's what I think is coming next, with the work with some of the veterinarians from the University of Arizona to prescribe and administer the medicines necessary to flush ovums.
Yeah.
And then the students will be able to then embryo transplant into those ovums, and then under the supervision of a veterinarian, place those ovums into the livestock. So I think that's high tech.
Yeah, very high tech with a vet, more of the vet science type of side of things that fill in with our ag science, which is
right.
Yeah.
The vet science, the vet tech a component to it. I'd like to see continued growth in the canine and the dog program. We have several students that use their companion animals, their pets, but I'd like to get most of them registered through an AKC program, bring in an AKC dog trial, a dog show, the training, obedience, service dog aspect that goes along with that, and then certifying these students and dogs as farm dogs, service dogs, herding dogs, obedience trained, because that's something that most of them will be able to utilize their whole life.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, and thank you for being a shining star for our district and our community, and as I mentioned, giving back to the community through FFA and other things. I know you spend a lot of time and effort doing not just your job here, but as you mentioned, going around the country doing things, and I know you've been recognized quite a bit. So we want to say thank you for all your hard work and all the things that you do, and hopefully we continue to see that program grow and flourish just like it's been doing. So thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.